recap 2021 Minnesota Class Championships. Which is this. I don't know when they're gonna update or upload the results. Probably I can see the actual results at some point, but yeah, okay. So 5 games to go through. I'm just gonna go through all 5 games. And by all 5 games, I mean all 4 games. And by all 4 games, I kind of mean all 3, unfortunately. But anyway. So first round, my opponent did not show up. So I won by forfeit. Let me see if I can import... How do you do things on 51 chess? Import PGN. There, okay. Okay. So game number 2, which was the first game I actually got to play. With the white pieces. My opponent was unrated. His name was Zane. He won his first round match against someone rated about 1,000. He's like a new guy he got into chess after watching the Queen's Gambit and then playing during quarantine online. So this was like his first actual live event. And I figured he's unrated, so you have no idea how good he is. He beat a 1,000 in the first round, so yeah, gonna be a serious game. So I have the white pieces, which is fun. Let me check. Yes, okay, fine. Some of it gets cut off a little bit. I'll make myself smaller. Okay. King's Pawn, Knight F3. So I have been playing the Scotch game online in Blitz and Bullet games for like all year, just because I like to give away all my pawns and have my bishops out and make a big attack. It's really fun in Blitz, and I figured I'd just keep playing it. But yeah, he played d6, which immediately I thought, okay, his dark square... I'll turn on the engine for this. I thought the dark square bishop... now it can't get out. So it's kind of stuck. So usually I think you try to get the bishop out before you play e6 or whatever. I don't know. I don't know anything. So I played d5 d6. So I played d5 right away to try to lock the pawns so that they can't move, so that his bishop would be stuck forever. And I also thought if he plays knight to b4, then I can play c4 and threaten queen a4 check, forking the knight. I'm good at arrows. But he just retreated. I got my bishop out. Reinforce the center. He attacks the center, but I don't want to take. Whoops. I don't want to take because then my center is kind of ruined. He takes back and like I don't have that much control anymore. So I just develop my pieces. He plays, this is like a one move threat kind of. So he's threatening the b2 pawn, so I defend it. Attacks my bishop, and then I'm like, okay, I'll bring back my bishop, attacking the queen, good times. And he retreats. So I felt like at this point, I've developed 3 pieces, I've advanced my pawns, and they're in pretty good formation. Black has only developed 2 pieces, his bishop is kind of stuck. So I thought up to this point the opening was pretty good. Just develop a piece. I think my plan was to like castle to move my knight around, and then I don't know, get my pieces out this way, assuming he castles, but or maybe just play on the queen's side. I don't know. I don't know anything. Castle. So he moves his knights, and now his bishop has a square. Not a lot going on here. So he moved his bishop again, and I was like, okay, I'll kick it, and then if he captures, so I take back. I thought that was a pretty good trade for me. Hello, Trouble Boy, 213. Welcome to my terrible, terrible games. Yeah, and then this one, I couldn't understand this one. I don't really know what black. I guess black should just play here. Well, I mean, the computer's telling you black should play c5, and then I don't know, play some stuff on the queen side. I would have thought, okay, you develop the bishop, you castle, whatever. You try to keep going. But this, he played knight f4, which just loses a pawn straight away, and then he developed the bishop. So I didn't really understand that. And this was apparently a big mistake. Yeah, I guess I should take on c3 right away. Which gets kind of interesting kind of fast. Or I guess, yeah, push in the center. Because this bishop is on the diagonal of the rook. And also, so it matters later. But opening up the center is actually really good for me now with this bishop pointed at his rook. But I dropped back, just threatening the pawn. He castled. So now I move back because I want to play f4. He threatens my pawn again. So I defend. And then he infiltrates. And here, I saw a nice combination, and I thought that rook d1 was like the most proper move, because the queen just has to go back. It's like if the queen goes here, then yeah, I could play f4, or I could even capture and push my pawn, and like this pawn is a absolute menace. So I thought this would be pretty good. So I thought rook d1 was proper, but I set a trap with rook e1 because it looks like black can capture the pawn, which is what happened in the game. So black captures, I capture, black captures again. And then the rook is skewering the queen. So I played this. So my rook and my bishop are both hitting the queen. So the queen has to move. So he found the best move. So this one, which still maintains the defense. But I didn't see queen h4. I thought that this was, the queen would have to go here or back here or something, and then I would win the bishop. So I thought I was really clever. And I could have been really clever if I moved the bishop to g4, which blocks queen h4. So now it's kind of hopeless. Like a piece is going to drop off now. And this would be enough to comfortably win, I think. But I played bishop f3. He found the best response. But now I still thought the position was pretty good, because now I get to take on c6 and yeah, queen trade. This one again, I think he should. I guess this is the best move. I thought he was gonna capture, but yeah, he threatens my rook. And I'm like, beam, so what? I don't care. Because if he takes my rook, I'll take his rook, and I also queen. He takes my queen, I take his bishop. Or actually, I take his rook. Yeah. Basically, can't go wrong. There's, yeah, the pawn is pinned. Here I got a little too fancy. I probably should have just taken the rook. But I played this fork, which I thought I was really clever, and he found again the really good response, where if I take the rook, this rook, then he takes my rook with check, so he's able to get back in time yeah, but it's still too much. And here I almost blew, like, this is still potentially a disaster. If I move my king here, the game's over. Not in the fun way. Because now this is check on my king and he's hitting my rook. So I move away, he captures the rook, and now I just lost. That's very precarious. But yeah, I didn't blow it. And then, yeah, there's not really... He made me go through to checkmate, which is fine. Because he's a new player, and I think that's a really fair thing to do. Especially when you're starting out, don't resign, whatever. Yeah, so this game, I think it was basically... I don't really understand knight f4. I feel like until knight f4, it was definitely a game, but then knight f4, everything just kind of fell apart. Because white, I got this big center, I got my pieces out, black hasn't even castled yet, so I like my queen being active here. And there was, yeah, I had a better chance here to win the bishop, but anyway. Okay. Yeah, good game. I thought he played several really clever moves that I was really impressed. For someone playing their first tournament, finding queen h4 to defend, I thought that was I was really, really impressed with that. Because I thought the game was just over. I thought I was winning the bishop and like, nah, it's fine. But then he found this to defend everything, and it's still pretty bad after pawn takes. But yeah, very resilient. Okay, so that was technically round 2, even though it was my first game because I got a bye in the first round. So that was round 2. Now round 3. So I have the black pieces, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding this game because I'm playing an unrated player who was not actually unrated. Let me flip the board, if I can figure out how to flip the board there. So this was a little sus. This guy, so he enters the tournament as unrated, which is fine. But I notice his board has a logo on it which says 1999 National Chess Tournament or something like that. But it was clearly the 1999 National Tournament, and I'm like, I'm very certain that is a rated event. So like, is this guy using, his sibling's board, like his sibling played or something? Like, how would he have a board from a tournament 20 years ago but be unrated? So I was suspicious, and then I checked later, and there was a big drama where when he I don't know the story because it got discussed outside of my earshot, but I think when he registered or renewed his membership, he hadn't played since 2007. And when he renewed his membership, it gave him a new ID rather than renewing his old one, and he just entered with the new one. I don't know why, so I won't speculate. But anyway, so he's actually rated 1488 currently. So this game, which is in the wrong section, that's like, it's the section I'm in is for 1400 and lower. So he ended up getting disqualified. So anyway, this is a great game though. So, and by great, I mean terrible. It was just a struggle. So I'm playing black. He plays a super solid, boring, I don't know even know if that's called King's Indian Attack. Something like, it looks like it, but so not a lot to say so far in the opening. Nothing really interesting is happening. So this was, I guess, technically my first mistake, according to the engine. I thought that this was kind of a no-brainer, pinning the knight to the queen, and I can potentially follow up really quickly. But I guess the engine really likes pushing the pawn right away. Yeah, I guess if the knight comes out, then you trade, and you can develop the bishop in sente, or with initiative, as they say. Okay, so that anyway, I thought this was fine. Then he kicks it, and he kicks it again. So I kind of like this. I like when my opponents push their pawns too much and create weaknesses. So I was happy with this. He brings his knight back. So I was trying to... He made all these dark square weaknesses, so I thought, okay, I'll put my queen on the dark square diagonal. Maybe I can take advantage. He moves his bishop out to contest. I block with mine. He trades. And then gets his knight over. So I thought... I mean, here the position is still fine. I guess I don't really have a great plan. I slide my rook over. I guess I don't know what I actually should do here. I don't know how to identify a goal in this kind of position. Eventually I start pushing my pawns to try to play on the queen side, but I don't know. Yeah, so now I start activating to try to get going over here. He continues on the king side. I bring in my knight. So he moved... This knight used to watch d4, but he moved it, so now I have this d4 square. And I was thinking, like, okay, I can't do it yet, but like this could be a really nice move at some point. This could be a really nice move. And I thought if he kicks my knight, I can bring it back to e6, and then I'll maybe have pressure on the d3 pawn. That's what I thought anyway. But I did not think about f4. I kept thinking he would trade pieces. I thought if he traded, I wasn't sure which one to recapture with, because I thought, initially I thought if he had way back here, like after the kick, I thought if he went right here right away to try to trade, I would just like keep playing whatever, and then if he trades, I would take with this pawn and open up my rook, which apparently is really bad. But I thought this could potentially be a good path, and I was wrong. But anyway, after all this stuff had happened, I still thought, okay, if he now with the rooks, okay, if he takes my bishop, I'm definitely taking back with this pawn, because opening this doesn't really make sense, opening my rook anymore, because if he just takes my rook, I have to move it anyway. So I thought this was kind of dumb. But yeah, he played f4. That really surprised me, and I did not know what to do. I did not know what to do. So I played... So the immediate threat is playing f5, which traps my bishop. So I just don't have time. I mean, so what? Okay, the engine wants me to play h6. So then, if this happens, actually, there was this pin, and I knew about this pin. So the one thing I noticed after he played f4 was that this knight is loose, and my queen is x-raying it. So, but I just don't know what to do. I just don't really know how, like, to make... So I played this thinking, okay, if he takes, that's really, really good, obviously. I'm going to retake with my knight. I've got two attackers here. His king is exposed now. So I know he's not going to take. So he played g5 as expected to maintain the stuff. I brought my knight back. He kicks my knight. I play here. And then he slid his rook over. So I moved my knight back here, and my plan was, okay, I'm putting a bunch of pressure on f4, so I'm attacking it with 2 pieces. He's only defending it with 1. So I know he's got to defend it. And my reading was that if he brought his knight back, then he's kind of stopping his pieces from being active. Apparently it's still really good. Apparently white is still very far ahead here. But I thought it wouldn't be that bad. But I thought, okay, if he slides the rook over, now I have knight takes g5, right? Because if he recaptures, this knight hangs. I capture, and like he can mess up my pawns and stuff. But like my queen is all up in his business. His king has no protection. This, I was like, he can't even take the pawn because his bishop is pinned. So I was like, this is what I was thinking was going to happen if he played rook f1. And I was like, well, this will be great. Like knight takes g5 is great. And then before I played it, I noticed that he doesn't have to retake. Instead, he can play knight f5, which solves the problem. Now there's no piece hanging, and it hits my queen. So I can't just retreat my knight because I lose my queen. And if I just retreat my queen, I lose my knight. So I was like, well, shit. Okay, my whole plan bringing my knight here was to be able to take this, and it doesn't even work. So there was a little bit of panic. So I went for another line, which I also thought, I guess the game wasn't as bad as I thought. I guess I could have just backed up my bishop and kept playing. I guess he can take my pawn. I'm really supposed to play this? Are you serious? This is the engine line, so don't blame. This looks like the worst bishop of all time until round 5. Anyway, so I end up taking this bishop, or taking the pawn with my bishop, thinking I would have some interesting continuations. He could potentially, like if he does anything other than take the bishop, I think I have really good responses. Because like if he tries to throw in this kind of move again, now I can just take it and I'm not risking a knight, so I can just back up. And I think the position is just okay. So I figured he would take it, and he did. And then I thought this was pretty nice, hitting 2 pieces, most notably the queen. And I thought there's potentially really interesting discoveries where here's where this was my big misread. I for some reason I just thought he was going to move his queen back to d2 or c2. And so my reading was like, okay, well, if he moved, like I just assume he's going to like move back here, then I'm going to take his pawn with check. Apparently this is still terrible for me. Holy cow. Yeah, man, my reading was bad. Because I just assumed he would take the knight, and then I take his knight with check. And then, yeah, it's like he can kind of defend everything. But I was like, his king is so exposed. I thought this would be okay. I got pawns for the knights. It seems reasonable. But yeah, then he played queen f3. So his queen is still defending the g3 knight now, which is bad. So that ruined my plan. So I took the bishop. He took with the king. I reinforced my h-pawn, which was really weak. And it also it locks down this square from the knights. So actually, like, he's up a piece, but it's not that bad because this knight on h4 can't do anything. It literally cannot do anything. So I was like, okay, maybe if I can mobilize, get my knight into the game, get some pawns rolling, because I've got 2 pawns for the knight, and the knight's not doing anything. So it's like, okay, this is very playable. So he puts his rook on the same file as my queen. I pushed. What was my plan? I don't remember why I pushed. I feel like I should have played this. Oh yeah, right, because he's got 2. So if he can just take my pawn, and I don't see how this is. Yeah. Oh, I didn't read this far, but yeah, if I play this, he can't take my pawn because I can fork his king and rook. Which, I guess this is probably... I mean, the engine says it's still +2, so probably good for white, but playable, I guess. Anyway, I didn't want to lose the pawn, so I figured if I push it, I can defend it. And then he pushed his queen, and I started thinking, okay, now his king is... Whoops. His king is exposed on this diagonal, so maybe I can get something in here. So I don't want to trade queens because I'm down a piece. Yeah, so I give him a check, and then I push. And now I'm starting to think there could be some really interesting stuff, like check, knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes, and that forks his rooks. So it's like, there might be some kind of shenanigans up here. But then, yeah, he plays this, and it's like, I had to trade. And then it's so annoying because now this knight covers the square too. If this knight didn't, if I could still do this, and he has to whatever, then it's like, this is totally fine. This is going to be a draw probably. But yeah, now he's got 2 knights here. So I tickle. The one thing I saw, I was pretty despondent at this point because I'm down a knight. And I've got this pawn, but I don't know how I'm going to be able to hold on to it. It's like maybe I can get my knight to protect it, bring my rook, I don't know. But like all of my hopes are on this d pawn. If I can push it, whatever. So the one thing I did see going into this variation is that this knight has nowhere to go. I thought it was potentially possible that he would just take the pawn here. I would take his knight. He could take my pawn or whatever, and this would be like a draw, or it's even. I thought it'd be so miserable if he had to bring the knight back to h1, but he did, and it saves the knight, so it makes sense. Yeah, and here I guess I just had the wrong idea. I guess I should put pressure on the g-pawn, so if I do this, he can defend it here. Then I could throw in the check. Then he can block. I can bring my other rook over. Oh no, then I lose the pawn. Yeah, I don't know anything. I could do this, so then if he takes my knight, I take his knight. If he takes my pawn, I take his pawn. And this is still... White still has the knight, so white's got to be better, but it can't do anything currently, so maybe I can put together some kind of hold. I don't know. Yeah, but he moves back, and I just kept thinking this d pawn is my only hope. I need to defend it. And yeah, I missed a tactic here. This was bad. This was so bad. I threatened his knight, but yeah, this move is great because now if he takes my knight, I take his knight, and now I've actually got support. It's like this. I think I could probably draw, where it's going to be annoying for him to capture this, and his pawns are all split. So I might be able to hunt them down. So like if he does this, I can make it still more annoying. He brings this over. I can... Oh, I guess I can cut off his king. I was thinking I could do this, but that's bad, I guess. Oh yeah, here. But yeah, I missed the tactic. So I saw the knight for knight trade, but I played the wrong one. This one prevents his rook from coming to f4 to defend it. I played this one, so he's able to bring his rook to f4, defending it. And then now... Yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about the rest of the game. I'm down a knight. I only have one pawn for it. It's a good pawn, but he's got a rook already blocking it, and he's going to be able to bring his knight in one move to defend the promotion square. So there's just... it's really hopeless at this point. So I played a few more moves. Yeah, so there's a sequence here that's like a one-way street. I don't know if they use that term in Go or in chess, but in Go they call it a one-way street because every move is forced. So it's like, okay, I take this pawn, he's going to take my pawn. He can't take with the knight. That's a big blunder because it becomes pinned to the king. And then the advantage is gone. Yeah, so this is probably a draw. So I knew he was gonna take with his rook, then I take with my rook, he takes with his knight, I can pin, he can defend with his rook, I can play this to kick the rook, he can play here giving me a check, I move my king over, and then this move is key. My reading was if he kept his king on there, the knight is still pinned, so now I can hit the rook. He brings the rook up. I hit the rook. I guess he can defend it, though. So, yeah, this still loses. Okay, so even in the... I didn't see... Man. I must have thought that I could take his knight. He would take with the king, and I would take... And so it was like winning for me. I think that's what I thought, and that's just not true at all because he just takes with a rook. Anyway, I don't know what I was thinking, but he played this circumventing or circumstepping whatever the pin, and I resigned because he's gonna promote this, and yeah, there's nothing I can do. So it was kind of a bummer to lose. But so because he was too high rated for the section, he actually got disqualified and this game ended up being voided and I was awarded a half-point bye. So kind of awkward, but I had a forfeit win in the first round. The second game was a win. Third one ended up being a half-point bye. Which is too bad. All right, so game 4. Game 4, I'm black again. You'll notice a recurring theme, by the way. I'm playing a guy named Sawyer, who's rated a little over 1,300. So I was really looking forward to this game because he's one of the strongest people with a rating in the section, so I'd be able to see how I stack up. So he plays d4, not my favorite. I don't get to play Sicilian, but I played my e6. So he's trying to do a London, and I don't know any opening theory against this. So I'm just making it up. I heard someone say e6 b6 once, so I play e6 and b6, and then I just try to not play stupid moves. And I have not looked at this too much yet. But yeah, I kind of liked my development. I bring in the bishop. Yeah, and he blocked. I didn't think about that move, but I thought trading is going to be really good for me. I mean, not really, relatively speaking, because now my queen is developed. So I would have been happy with that. But he blocked. So then I put pressure. But in retrospect, I really wish I had castled because of the pin that we're about to see. So he pins my knight immediately. And I realize, like, oh, that's kind of annoying. I can't castle now. That just loses everything. It's like I can take this, but... yeah, whatever. He's up a piece. He's up a bishop. So I can't castle now. So I reinforce the knight with my queen. And I also thought, if this knight moves, I've got 2 pieces hitting his bishop, so I might be able to win a pawn that way. So he attacks the knight again, so I have to defend it again. He castles. Because yeah, I did read beforehand, I was like, well, I don't see how he can add more pieces to this attack, right? He's got his 4 pieces out right now, and his rook's not coming anytime soon because all the pawns are still on the board, and his knight is going to need like 1, 2... I don't even know where it could go. At least 2 moves to reinforce this knight. So I felt like it was time to castle, and that also frees up the pin, so now I can take his knight, which I do, because this, so the reading, this is exactly, it's kind of a one-way street for the next like 4 moves. I take his knight, he takes mine, I take his pawn, he takes my bishop, I take his bishop. Ooh, so it looks like I win a pawn, but then he has queen takes a7, hitting everything. Then I retreat my queen to defend everything. And then here, if he's careless and just plays some move, then his queen gets trapped. So that would be good for me, bad for him. But I saw this, that he could put his bishop here, and now he's hitting my bishop with 2 pieces. And when I was calculating this, I thought, okay, I'll just defend it. And then I can like move my queen down to free up the pin or something. And then in the actual position, I was like, oh wait, my rook is defending my queen, so I can just take the bishop. So I did. And then here, this is great. I really, eventually I play c4, but I wish I had played it now. Because I play this to take the open file and to kick his queen. He moves it all the way back. But if I had blocked this diagonal first, then if he makes, you know, like a knight move here, trying to bring his knight to a really nice square, then it's like his queen has nowhere to go. It does actually have places to go, but it's like it can get suffocated really quickly. So I wish I had thought about that. I wish I had thought to play this move immediately to cut off the queen's retreat. That would have been a nice idea. But instead, I let his queen escape, which is still okay. This is the position I was expecting from like 6 moves ago when all the exchanges happened. And I thought this was still even, or maybe a little bit better for me because my rook is already active. So now I play c4. I see this square on this d3 square, and I'm like, man, if I could get a knight there, I would be really happy. If I can somehow maneuver my knight there, it's going to be a monster. So I stuck to that plan. And because he has no way to get rid of it, the only way for him to get rid of it is to either sack the exchange or to bring his knight back. And I was thinking, so I bring my knight here, or my rook over, he moves his queen, and I didn't really know what to do. There's some potential shenanigans down this file, or like with this pawn dropping off. I brought, so I was thinking that he would drop his knight back to e1 to try to kick out my knight. And if he did that, I wanted to move my knight to f4, and then I could bring my rook to e2 and start crunching on the second rank. And so to prepare, the problem with that though is that if I do some move and he does this, my pawn is only defended by the knight. So I was like, okay, I'm defending it now, but if he kicks it, I thought like, okay, I come back, then he can take my pawn, and like my center's starting to collapse. I didn't realize how devastating this would be though. Yeah, the engine is saying this is way, way, way better for black. So I'm good at chess. Anyway, I was just worried about queen taking my pawn, which is why in this position I slid my rook over to defend it. He tries to threaten here, and yeah, here, so I just defended. I didn't think too hard about it, and then so like he's got some play here. He's hitting my pawn immediately. His knight looks very good. Like, my knight is a superstar. His knight is definitely a star. Maybe not a superstar, but definitely a star. So I feel like I went wrong letting his knight get there, but I don't know. I guess there's no real way to prevent it. So I slid my queen over. I want my queen on this diagonal because it's hitting the knight and it's potentially hitting the king. I didn't understand this. Or no, this one I did understand. This was... So it's like, okay, if he takes my pawn, I can't take back with this because he'll take my queen. So I have to take back the other way. And this one, yeah, the engine is saying b4. And I just don't... Like, okay, so my knight is defending this. So he... So, oh man, this is just such a tight position. Man, I can't believe I missed this. I was afraid of this. But I didn't see that I could take it with the with the knight. And then he can pin. I can sack the rook. Yeah, and I was thinking, okay, now I'm fine, but actually I'm not. So you got to play this, and if he takes the queen, you take his queen. So, you know, just a casual 12-move tactical sequence. Yeah, anyway, I didn't see all of that. And also, I mean, it's just, you play this move, it's so complicated. There's so many captures that can happen. The one thing I knew is that he couldn't take that pawn because his knight would be hanging. That was, I did consider this. I considered b4 for a couple minutes, but I just couldn't. I thought this, man, I feel dumb. I just thought this was not working for me, but it actually is. I need to read better. So anyway, I brought my rook up to e5 because there's some like takes variations where if he takes, I take. Now he can't take this anymore because I can defend it. Whereas if I had put my rook like here and takes, now he can take this and I'm hurting. Okay, A3. I didn't understand. I don't understand this move at all. I really just had no idea. I don't know. But that was the move. Now I got to double up my rooks. So now I felt pretty solid. I was like, I'm going to get to E2 or I'm going to yeah, I wanted to like bring my queen over, bring my knight over, get something into e2, which is now like if my queen is here and I put my knight here, then it's like check and also hitting the knight and also hitting this pawn, and there's potential discoveries with the queen. I was like, this feels really promising now. So he played king f1, which I guess is helping to defend against this. I I can't believe it. The top move is actually h6, but I kind of wish I had played it. But I thought this was like a slam dunk. The best move is to move his king back. That's kind of funny. But yeah, now he could blunder checkmate in one, but he doesn't. He blocks it this way. So he's hitting my rook. So here I probably spent like 15 minutes on this, and so I played this. I guess this is a little bit better, but this basically forces my two rooks being traded for his queen. He can't. I mean, he can't move anywhere. You want to know what's hilarious? I literally, if he had played this, I literally did not see that I could take the queen. I guess he could go here. That's like a sort of move to not give up the queen, but I figured any queen move, I take his pawn with check, he moves over, then what? It's going to be like I'm going to bring my other rook. It's just going to be disaster. So I figured he was going to take. I would take. He's going to take my rook, and then the big thing here is that c3 is hanging. So my queen gets in. Now I've got a passed pawn. I got checks to work with. My king is still really safe, so I felt like this was going to be a good situation. He takes, and here I spent like another 15 minutes, and I read out, okay, this is all a forced sequence. I check. He's only got one move. I take the pawn with check. He can't move here because he gets checkmated. So he goes there. I can check. He has to move his king into the corner, or like at least on the edge of the board. If he moves here, this is blundering a discovery. So he's in check, and then I take one of his rooks, and that should be good enough. So he moves into the side of the board, and then my reading was, okay, I can play knight c3, forking his rooks, and you like, oh great, you're going to win a rook for the knight. And in my reading, my first thought was, okay, he's going to slide his rook over, pinning me. So this doesn't work, because now I'm pinned. I can't take the rook because he'll take my queen. And then that was the first thing I thought, after about 2 minutes. And then after another 2 or 3 minutes thinking of other variations, I came back to this and I was like, wait, this is fine. I'll just take the rook. He'll take my queen. I'll take his rook. And then I'm only up one pawn, but this is a good pawn. It's tough to stop this pawn from promoting. It's actually impossible. So either, yeah, if he like brings his king to try to stop it, then I can always just push it. He can block. I can bring my knight over. He can bring his king. I'm going to be able to get this pawn, though. So I was like, his king is not in time. I'm going to be able to capture his pawn here. And then, yeah, basically I was like, I didn't read all this out, but I'm like, I'm going to have 2 pawns on one edge of the board. It should be enough for me to win. So anyway, so we play all these moves, and then he plays rook e1. And I was completely taken aback. And I can't take his rook because I lose the game immediately. So I did see that. I didn't just snap off his rook triumphantly. But yeah, I totally missed this idea. So I'm like, okay. So I play f6. so that if he ever checks, I can bring my king to f7. And also it's hitting these two squares, which limits the knight, which I thought was clever. But apparently Engine says this is the best move, so whatever. Yeah, okay, so he attacks my queen here. This is a fork, which is good. So he defends this pawn, but now this pawn is falling off. So I take this pawn. He defends, or he evacuates his rook. He put it on the same diagonal as his king, though. So now this was like, I played queen d6, pinning the rook, and I'm like, okay, this is over. It's like, it's impossible to stop this move now. But he's very resilient. And it's tricky. There's actually some tricky stuff. Like, I thought... What was... there was some checkmate that I could actually get checkmated by... I don't remember now. I guess I thought he would move his king up to avoid, or to get out of the pin. Oh, yeah. Here's what I was reading. I was thinking he moves his king up to get out of the pin. I check him. If he takes the pawn, then his rook dies, so he's not going to do that. If he moves back, then he's still in the pin, so then I can win the rook. But I thought he could move here. And then my reading, this is great. My reading is like, okay, well, now I can play check, and he cannot maintain defense of the rook. So he'll take, I'll take his rook, and then I get fucking checkmated again. Sorry for the language. And when I saw this checkmate in my reading, and I was like, oh my god, nothing works. Like, I cannot crack this. At least I'm not giving up. Yeah, I guess the engine is just saying, okay, just block with the knight, dum-dum. And then his king is, like, super exposed. You've still got the queen. His rook is hanging. It can't go anywhere. It's still fine. But I thought it was really funny how it was still very possible to blunder checkmate, even being that far ahead. Okay, so he played this knight move. Yeah, and again, if I take the knight, I lose. Check. This is my only move, and then checkmate. So there's still a lot of tricks. Chess is really stressful like that. It's like, I feel like when in my serious Go games, it's like you get to a certain point where you can't lose. You can't blow it. Like, if you're way ahead in a game, you just cannot blow it. It's not a thing that's possible. It's like in basketball, if you're up 30 points with 3 minutes left, you cannot lose, right? The game is over. But in chess, if you're up 30 points, you can still make one mistake and blow it really easily, which is really stressful. Okay, so anyway, on with the game. So I figured this was the simplest way to force a trade, and then I thought he would move his king to get out of the pin, and then now this sequence works for me. If he goes down here, this takes. Now I can take because I've got this pawn, so there's no checkmate. So that was my plan. He ended up playing rook takes, so the pin is still there. So I attack it. I took it. We kept going a little bit, but I mean it's over at this point for sure. And after I took the rook, he resigned. Yeah, so this, I feel like I learned a lot from this game. So he was 1309 rated, and I never felt. So I feel like I must be at least a couple hundred points stronger than that, because I felt like I never really felt like, even though I was black, I never really felt like white had a chance this game. At least with the move. I mean, I know white did, but he just didn't quite find the right moves to take advantage of my inaccuracies. I mean, it's just one game, whatever. But yeah, winning against 1300 definitely gave me some confidence. Yeah. Okay, and then okay, so last game I don't have recorded yet. I mean, I don't have in digital form yet. I only have it on my paper, so it's gonna go a little bit slower. I have the black pieces again, which I was kind of annoyed about. 3 out of the 4 games I actually played, I had black. Um, which opponent physically looked like they would be the highest rated? I am going to choose to not answer that question. I will say all of my opponents looked very strong. Um, and I don't know what a high rated chess person looks like. There was a girl in the top section rated like 2260 or something. She could not have been more than 12 years old. It was I definitely I would have been intimidated by her. Um, okay, so last game, so I have 3.5 points because they went back and gave me a half point for the third game against the guy who was in the wrong section. So I have 3.5 points. There's one guy with 4 points, and then there's like 6 people with 3 points. So I'm currently in second place. So I'm playing the guy who's in first. If I win the last game, I win the tournament with 4.5. No one can catch me. If I lose, I feel like I think that some of the guys with 3 are gonna win. So there'll be like a few people with 4 points, one person with 5 points. So I don't think I get anything. Um, and if we draw, then I'll have 4 points, so I'll at least be tied for second. So my opponent is unrated this game. I talked to him after, and he and I are about the same rating online. But he has never played over the board. I guess he played a little bit when he was a kid, but I think he probably played the local tournaments, not the nationally rated ones. So I think he and I are pretty much in the same boat, where we played as kids, and then we probably got into it more recently, and yeah. But I checked, and he does not have a rating, so that one's legit. Okay, so he plays e4. I play the Siciliano, knight c3, which, yeah, I don't know. He wants to keep the position closed or something. I don't know. I'm used to knight f3, then d4, and there's trades and whatever. I didn't really know what to do, so I just played my normal thing. Knight f3. I play knight f6, and I thought about this. I thought, okay, he can play e5. I'll bring my knight over. If he takes, I think I'm happy with this, because I got center control. Even though my pawns are doubled, which is like theoretically a bad thing or whatever, I felt like this pawn could potentially be weak. It's pushed really far up. I don't know. I thought this would be okay. But he moved his knight here, which is okay. And then, yeah, the engine wants me to just play f5 immediately. That's cool. So f5... He can take en passant if he wants. I'll take back with the knight. Yeah, we could potentially trade a bunch of pieces. He plays this. And, like, this is just a normal chess game, whatever. I didn't think about f5. I never even thought... And I have not reviewed this yet, so I might be surprised at a bunch of stuff. This one might take a while. I should have... Oh, can I delete from there? Delete from here, yeah. Yeah, okay, because he plays this. And I play, so I just develop my knight. And I knew that he could kick me, and he did, so he kicks my knight. And I thought about this for a while. So I'm gonna maintain the tree, so I played knight b6. I thought about playing this, because I thought, okay, if he plays d4, it's a discover attack on my knight, so I drop it back. And then I didn't see how he was able to defend e5 anymore. So I thought if he pushes, then I just take, and I thought this would be okay. If he takes, then... Oh, wow. What? Oh, it wants me to take with the bishop, because if he takes my bishop, then I have this check. Clever. I didn't think about that. I thought I would just take one of the pawns, and it's like, okay, if we trade... whatever, he can... Yeah, this check would be really bad. This doesn't seem that bad. I castle. You know, his pawns are pretty far advanced. It's kind of uncomfortable. My bishop, I'm going to have to at some point play this and get my bishop out this way, but like, I thought that'd be okay. So I really thought about bringing my knight up here, but I brought it back to b6 instead. Funny story, really funny story, actually, super funny. I was super strongly thinking about playing knight e7, because I thought, okay, now if he plays f4, I don't have to immediately move my knight to retreat it. I can maybe play d4 first or something. If he plays, or sorry, he plays d4, I could play d5, whatever. And then right before I played it, I realized, oh, that would blunder checkmate. I would have loved to see his expression if I had done that. And I would have not loved to see my expression if I had done that. But I was really close. Like, I almost picked up my hand to move the piece, to move the knight to e7. But anyway, okay, so I go back to b6. He plays d4. It's like the only move. So I take. And then he can't take the pawn right away, because then I take his pawn. And now I'm up a pawn. And he really has nothing to show for it. So yeah, so he plays this check, which is pretty annoying. I have to take, he takes. And here, this is interesting. Maybe I was thinking about the game wrong at this point. I don't know. I played this move. He's got 2 attackers on my pawn. I only have 1 defender. But I realized, okay, I can play e5, and now I'm defending. And if he plays this check, I play f6, and now I've got 4 in a row, so I win. Right? But I thought, okay, he can play the check, I can block. If he backs up the bishop, then like, I've got a really nice pawn chain. My d-pawn is passed. It's got nothing standing in its way, so if we get to an endgame, I'm up a pawn. I felt like this would be okay. I felt like it was pretty playable. So anyway, I played it. He did play the check. I blocked. And then I guess the engine wants you to bring the bishop back there. He dropped it still on this diagonal. Okay, this is interesting. So there's a problem here. There's a problem. I'm pretty sure I played h5 here, right? a5, yeah. So I played a5. There's a problem where if I castle, my knight gets kicked, and I can't retreat it. And this is hilarious. It's telling me to just move my king. Because it's like, okay, if I move my knight here, it gets... Like, I can't move the knight anywhere. These squares are covered by these pieces. And I literally can't move it back here. So the one open square is d5. If I move it to d5, he can pin it with his bishop, and there's no way to defend. Well, there's one way to defend, which is this, but he can immediately kick my knight. And then this is not good. Not only am I losing a piece, but I don't have any compensation for it. Yeah, so it's literally saying just move your king. Yeah, I guess at least this way I get out with check. Blocks, and I can capture this. Can reinforce, so it's like I'm down. I have a pawn for the bishop, so it's kind of like last game, except I'm down. Or it's not like last game, it's like 2 games ago, where it's like I'm down a pawn for a piece or something, but I've got some pawn ideas, so maybe it's okay. That's an interesting way to think about it. I really had no idea what to do. So, because this is so miserable. Like, I cannot get this bishop out, and I cannot move this knight anywhere. So I played a5 thinking I can move my rook up and then bring my knight back to a8 and then move my pawn and then my bishop. That's how I can get going. That was my grand plan, which is pretty bad. Pretty bad plan. He plays a3. I guess he believed me or something. So yeah, here I should definitely push. I didn't think about this at all, but I really wish I had played this move. This would change the whole game, as you'll see. But oh, whoops, I gotta delete that now. Or do I? Wait, is this all a variation? Oh, damn, I fucked up the tree. Sorry, okay, I'm gonna go back and... Damn, sorry. Okay, I messed up the thing. I played this one. Right, okay. So now oh, whoops. So now I wish I had played the eventual plan I came up with, which was better. You'll see in a minute. Okay, so I played this, So now I came up with the idea of g6 with the idea to, like, I can't put my king on this diagonal, but I could move my king like this over to g7. And if I can get my king to g7, I can bring my queen to f1 or f8, hitting this pawn, and there's like no way to defend it. Other than if you push the pawn, that's okay. As long as if my knight can move here and not get pinned, that's fine, because then you can attack it. I'll go here, whatever, it'll be fine. So I wanted to step my king over here, attack this pawn, whatever. And like, this is pretty precarious, but I just have enough defenders on the pawns that it's not a crisis. So he plays queen d2, which is kind of worried. So now if I bring my king over, he can check and infiltrate, and that looks a little sketch. So now I played king f2, because now, and this was just a misread, this was so sad, because he moved his queen here, so now it's not covering a4, so it's like, okay, so he can kick my knights, and now I can escape it here, and I completely missed this move. Queen d2, or c2. and my knight is still trapped. So in retrospect, I really wish I had either pushed this pawn, or I guess I can move my knight right away. That looks smart. I wonder why I didn't do that. Because I could move my knight, then I could reposition it to c5. And actually it could come over to e4, maybe. That looks much, much better. But anyway, I get my knight trapped on the rim, which is grim. And I start panicking, and I hate chess, and I never want to play again, and why did I do this at all? But my opponent's unrated, so I have no idea how strong he actually is. So the one thing is like, okay, this guy could be some total hack, right? He could be like some grandmaster who just never played before. So I'm not stressing out too much. It's like, okay, if I lose and he's actually like legit a really strong opponent, then it's fine. Okay, so now I start going crazy. Because I'm like, okay, I can't do anything with my knight. I could take the pawn, he takes the pawn with his queen, then I can push up my pawn, and it's like, maybe I can get my bishop out and start doing stuff, but then I'm just down a pawn for the knight, and I do have this menacing pawn, but it's like, it's not creating enough chaos, or like it's not putting any pressure on him. I felt like it was kind of slow, and it's like, okay, well, if I'm gonna lose, I wanna fucking lose. Like, I'm gonna go. Okay, so I play e4, attacking his knight, and he can't. It looks like, oh, why doesn't he just take the pawn? Well, then I laugh because I can skewer the queen to the king, and he loses the queen, which is great. He could still take my knight, but now I would take his knight, and that would be fine. Probably good for me, actually. So he retreats his knight. Now I play g5. I want to get his bishop off this diagonal. He comes back. Man, I can't believe that this is kind of sad that it's like +6. I thought it was... I thought I was okay, so I play f5, and my thought this whole time is like, yeah, my knight is dropping off, but if he takes my knight, I can trap his bishop. That's not nothing, right? He's gonna be able to trade. He's gonna like take my pawn, I take his pawn, then he takes d4. So it's pretty bad. I'm losing all my pawns and a knight for his bishop. So it's still bad, and I still can't move any of these pieces. So it makes total sense why it's +7. White is way, way, way better here. But my opponent, I mean, I also feel like this is kind of scary, seeing all these like, the king is not castled, the bishop is not developed, and all these pawns are marching in your face. It's kind of scary. Okay, so I played f5. He plays f3. And there, I actually thought I was going to win when he played f3. Because I thought my pawns were going to become just rock solid now. And like, I still am probably going to lose the knight. But like, if I have these rock solid pawns, I think that'll buy me plenty of time to mobilize the rest of my pieces. So I thought about this for a really long time. This was probably my longest think of the tournament, because I didn't know whether to play e3 or f3. I knew I had to push one of my pawns, but I didn't know which. I played e3. I guess if I play f3, I thought, okay, he takes my knight. Now I can attack his knight. Yeah, and he can take my pawn. I take his knight. He recaptures. And it's like, the material's not that bad, actually. If you look at just the material, I'm only down a pawn. But like, this bishop still can't move. It's so bad. It's just so bad. It's like, I gotta play something like this. I have to play like 15 moves to start getting my... and my king is exposed. Like, his king is exposed too, but like, my bishop is just so bad. So yeah, I ultimately didn't go with that because I didn't believe in it. So I went with this. I also this I thought was really scary as well because this opens up this capture. But my reading, so he played not that. He played bishop c4 check. But my reading was if he captures with check, I don't want to block with my queen because then he can play this check. And then I thought if he trades, yeah, and he gets this check, and now this knight is too good. It's like the material, again, the material balance is okay. It's not actually that bad. Is it even? Yeah, it's 7 pawns, 7 pawns. Yeah, it's even, but like this bishop is just so bad. If I could teleport my bishop to f5, then it'd be fine. But yeah, it's gonna be such a pain getting this bishop into the game. So I thought this was okay, but yeah, it's still really good for white. But I thought it'd be okay because the material is equal. So it's like we'll keep playing. Maybe I'll have a chance with something here. Oh right, but he was gonna. So I was just gonna sidestep rather than allow the check, which I guess is even worse. But I thought, so he can bring his knight in. I didn't really see how white was going to kill me here. Wow, this is +9? I thought if this happened, it'd be okay. Because, yeah, I can capture this pawn. I can move this pawn up and slide over. I can bring my... I thought this would... I can't believe this is +10. Wow, I thought this was salvation. But anyway, he plays check with the bishop. I slide my king over. This ended up potentially being a mistake. But so then he takes my knight. I take his knight. He takes the pawn. So material is equal, but I still have this mess to deal with. Yeah. So here, okay, so b6 actually is the move. It's still bad though. Here, in retrospect, I wish I had played this first, or I had put my king on g6. So anyway, it falls apart here. Spoilers. So I play this because I'm thinking like, okay, you know, I'm threatening this pawn, and if I capture the pawn, fine. I've got linked pawns, which is good. And this is letting my bishop finally get into the game, which I was like, I just have to get my bishop into the game. But I overlooked this check. So that was bad. He plays this, and now I have to play this to prevent the skewer. And I saw it, but I didn't believe that this worked. So I captured. But I thought if I played this, he would just capture. Yeah, oh, I thought he would take this pawn. Oh, no. Sorry, his bishop is hanging. So yeah, he gets this with check. So I guess I can block. Queen trade. He can retreat the bishop. Yeah, I saw this pawn thing and I was like, this doesn't look good. So I just thought I couldn't play this pawn move. So I stuck with my plan of that, and then, yeah, the problem is this skewer. He can skewer the king to the rook, which is bad. But my knight is defending it. But so that's kind of the purpose of why he brought his bishop there. So he takes my knight. I take his bishop. He checks me. Skewer. I moved. So this is another decision. I don't know what to do. If I move up, then when he takes my rook, I have to recapture with my queen. He takes this pawn, and like he's hitting my rook. I have to move my bishop here or something. Just this looked really dicey. So I stepped my king back because I had a brilliant plan, which actually worked. He should just check me, and that becomes very painful. But he very quickly, he took my rook very quickly. And this actually is not that bad. because I noticed, okay, I can take the pawn, and now I'm defending everything. He plays this, and I take, which is another mistake. So yeah, actually, this is pretty even, because I have a bishop and a pawn for the rook. So slightly better for white, but really not that bad. I think, like, two grandmasters playing each other, this is probably a draw. Maybe not, I don't know. But I'm not a grandmaster. Okay, so c takes. So he plays rook. Wait, no, he plays rook c1. Shit, I just broke it. Can I delete? Okay, so this. Yeah, and I don't know I don't know how to hold this, because it's saying to put my bishop here, but it's like, I thought I don't know. I thought my pawn is getting attacked twice. I need to defend it, so I defended it. But that's a big mistake. Man. He plays queen c4 check. I move my king up. Again, I'm supposed to just block with the bishop, allow. So I guess it's like, I block with the bishop, he takes the pawn, I take his queen. I don't know, I went up. But what is it supposed to be? Oh, what if he just takes it? Oh! Check. Interesting. Oh, I didn't see that. Shit, man. I was thinking about... I did see this check, but I didn't see this line in particular. Interesting, okay. Anyway, I moved my king up, and yeah, then he gets his king in, and that's when I started to feel like, okay, this is kind of bad. Him getting his king active. On the one hand, maybe if I could teleport my bishop to b5, the game would be salvageable, but like, it feels tough to hold this all together. So I play rook b8 because I'm thinking like, okay, he can win this pawn. That's the big problem, and he does. He takes. I was hoping he would try to get. I was hoping he would defend like that. Yeah, so I would get a chance to move up and like do something. I don't know. I gotta delete again. But so he takes my pawn with check. So I have to take, he takes, and I take off his pawn, which is good. He plays g3. I'm hitting the other pawn. And I don't know if this is holdable. I still have a bishop and a pawn for his rook, but I don't know how to play this well enough to try to salvage a draw. Because I played king f6, but I guess I need to start checking. I played king f6. He plays h4. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But I figured if I take, he retakes with his rook, and then he's eyeing h7, which also hits my bishop, which is bad. So I actually played g4, and he captures. And then I captured back. And then he plays check. And I played king g6, which is bad. I need to get over and support the bishop, apparently. Which makes sense. It just felt bad, though. It just felt really bad. So I played king g6. And it's slipping away. He plays rook c3. I play... So here I was thinking, okay, rook d2 check. King c5. So I was thinking he would go here. The issue, when he puts the rook on c3, now it's on the same rank as his pawns. And his pawns are all on dark squares, so I just can't do anything. I can't do anything offensively. There's nothing for me to hit. The only, like, I could try to hit this rook somehow, but like, I didn't know how I was supposed to find counterplay or whatever. Yeah, I really need to study endgames. I bet this would have been holdable if you go back 5 moves and play it better. So I play rook d5 check, king b6, and my idea here, so I play rook b5 check, king c7. So I was like, okay, if I just go back over here, what does he actually do? Like, how is he getting in? He can't do anything with his king. Yeah, he can bring his rook and threaten this pawn, but I'm defending it still. So I didn't have a ton of time left at this point, and I also just didn't really know what I was doing. But yeah, he plays rook f8, and I back up my king. Then he plays rook d8. Yeah, and it's like I saw this and I was like, okay, I'm in trouble. So I played this. He played rook takes c6. So I guess I could have sidestepped and tried to keep the pieces on. But I took his rook. He took mine. I guess, yeah. I mean, it's white wins at this point. I played some more moves. I'll put them down for the record, but there's not really anything to do. I played bishop b3, rook c5, a4, rook g5 check. So he's winning this pawn. He takes it. I play h5. And here I'm thinking, like, he plays rook g5. So bishop d1. And here I'm thinking, like, okay, maybe I can somehow force a draw if, like, because my bishop can defend both my pawns at the same time. But it's really no hope. He plays this. And I meant to play this, but I just kind of brain farted at this point. I played bishop b3 without, I don't know, I just wasn't thinking. He took my pawn, and I resigned. Because absolutely no chance now. Yeah, so I'm going to grab the PGN while I have it. So yeah, I'm okay with this opening. Man, I like how f5 is always the answer, and I just never thought of it. Up until here. Here I really wish I had played a4. Because then I would have had the square for my queen later, which would have been really big. Because where was it? Yeah, here. It was right here. When he traps my knight, I'm like, well, if my pawn were still on... If we hadn't played the a5, a3 exchange, then this is no problem. Because he attacks my knight, I can bring my queen to defend it. And also put more pressure here. And then if he tries to kick it, then I deposit it here. Yeah, so it's like, I really wish I didn't have that exchange on the board. But that was too bad. Yeah, and then here, I feel like I salvaged pretty well. Honestly, I mean, slapping the rook off and then taking this pawn. I guess he can just bring... Yeah, okay, so he brings his rook over. So if I capture his bishop, then he checks me. I have to go up. And now he's pinned my bishop to my rook, which I guess puts him in a better position than just this. But yeah, right here, it's like... I think a stronger player would probably be able to draw this. I just don't know how. So this is a weak area that I should probably try to improve on if I want to keep competing. End games. Who'd have thunk it? But yeah, I didn't see Queen C2. That's so sad. Okay. All right, cool. Well, those are my games. So I finished with 3.5 out of 5, which somehow was good enough to tie for second place or something. So I basically got my entry fee back, which was kind of nice. Yeah. And I didn't eat anything all weekend, so that's the real victory. Playing all those games took so much focus that I didn't notice not eating. So I'm expecting to have a really solid weigh-in tomorrow morning. We'll see. Okay, cool. That is it for my review. Thanks everyone who watched it live, and I think I'm going to try to upload it to YouTube for historical purposes, although I don't see why I would ever want to revisit most of these games because it was just agonizing. The 2 games I lost were just agonizing. Chess is so dumb. Okay.